From Singapore to Slovakia, Bangkok to Berlin, home is where our global journey takes us. I'm Doreen Cumberford, and this is Nomadic Diaries, where we explore the vibrant world of international living through authentic stories and expert insights. Join us as we navigate the challenges and celebrate the joys of living abroad. Together, we're mastering the art of global lifestyles. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Nomadic Diaries. We are the podcast that helps expats and nomads build their dream lives no matter where they're living, all the while having an adventure. And so it's my pleasure today to introduce our featured guest. And our featured guest is Iliana Genkova. Hello, Iliana.
Hi, Doreen. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. I was glad that we could squeeze you in here this week. And Iliana is from Bulgaria. She came to America in 1999 as a single professional woman and has traveled meantime and then returned to the US. So at one time you took a great big leap in your life. Tell us about your big leap to move to the US.
The big leap happened at the end of 1999, and it was half planned, half not planned. In a way, I was happy where I was, but also the culture, the situation in the country was starting to get a little bit limited, and I had just graduated from college, so I decided I have to try something new. And I was close to graduating, so I tried to get a fellowship, and a lot of European countries were not very responsive to the idea. But I did find a university in the States, and I packed my suitcases and I came to the States.
Now, I think I read that when you packed your suitcases, you came to the States, that you had $200. Is that correct?
Yes, I started with $200. All the savings that we had at the time, the currency had changed in Bulgaria, and it amounted to about $1,000, which was just enough to buy a ticket and to have $200 left over.
My goodness. A lot of people in America would say that was just incredibly brave. And so you said that it was partly planned, but not planned. Tell me about your approach to planning a big leap like that, and how has it evolved?
Well, in general, I'm a planner. Even when I did my homeworks in school, I would organize my textbooks in the order I want to study them. But the coming to America started with, okay, I'll have a degree and I'll find a job, and that's the planned part. But at the end, what happened was my grandmother's brother had immigrated to the States years ago, I think in the 40s, and they finally reconnected after all these years. About 1998 is when we get the first letter from him. We knew that he is in Cleveland, Ohio, and my grandma said, wouldn't it be nice if I can go visit my brother one day before I die? She was 84 at the time, I think. So coincidentally, my uncle won a green card from the lottery and moved to live with his uncle, my grandma's brother. And then I decided to piggyback and join the party and take my grandmother to her brother. At the end, she decided not to join. She felt too old, too tired, too risky, and I arrived by myself. There was somebody to stay with initially, so that was nice. But then the unplanned part was I was so unaware and so naive about coming to America without plans, what to do once here. I had no work visa. My English was not all that good. I wasn't a good driver. I didn't have any of my documents with me quite yet. So I realized things need to get different. Need to change things.
So that sounds like it was quite a wake-up call for you.
Yeah, you have family, but you don't have plans. And they had their lives. They had their job, kids to school.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I had to make a change in the plan.
Yes. So once you got there, did you stay with them for very long?
Actually, no, I only stayed for about 2 weeks.
Oh my.
I arrived on Christmas morning. We celebrated. We had New Year's together, and I think it was January 4th that I took a bus and I moved to Chicago. where a college friend of mine was living. And in my opinion, I either have to go to a big city and see what happens or go back.
Yeah.
Staying home with my cousins and my grandpa was not everything that I wanted to do.
Mm.
So I moved to Chicago and I started again.
Were you afraid? Was there some fear in along the process? Because it sounds very matter of fact when you talk about it.
Well, the fear is there, but when you come on a one-way ticket and you don't have any money left, and you know going back would not get any better. I mean, the economy in Bulgaria at the time was not great. So
Mm.
it was either this or that. So here in the States, at least in Chicago, I had a chance versus
Yes.
not having any chances.
Yes, yes. So you recognized that there were opportunities in the States and you were willing to take the risk and you were young. I think, when we're young, it's much easier. It's different when we're older and wiser and we've done it a few times and we understand the risks. Were you
Exactly.
aware of the risks at the time?
Not really. I didn't even know it's illegal to work without a job permit.
Oh, yeah, yes. That's the other thing. We don't know what we don't know. And most of us are blindsided by something that we don't know about. Very interesting. So, if you were giving advice to someone who was struggling, thinking about moving, what would you say to them now?
I would say don't wait for things to get too bad.
Mm,
Start recognizing what works and what doesn't work, and if
mm-hmm,
you need to change your attitude or change the place or change something in the environment. Do a plan and think a little bit ahead.
mm,
Be honest with where you are.
yes. So there's a good thing. Be honest with where you are. Think a little bit ahead. Um, change your environment, but change up something.
Yeah. Back to your question on how I make plans, I can recognize that I started with very black and white plans. This is America, it's shiny, it's big, it's great, let's go. And then after a while, you start doing the planning a little bit more measured, a little bit more precise. And
Mm,
yeah, when you have nothing to lose, it's so easy to move. But when you
mhm.
already have something going well, then the decisions are harder. But still,
That's true,
yeah,
because
I,
then you have more choices. So tell me about the perfect place. So one of the things that we had made notes on was that sometimes a place looks really enticing and perfect on paper. Um, tell me about when that happened for you.
yes. After the US and living here for about 9 years, I got my citizenship and I thought that's the great time to go see the world now that I've secured my return. The first place I moved to was the UK because I thought I speak English, so that
Mhm.
must be easy. The culture should be somewhat similar. And I did find a great job, which was perfect on paper. It was an international organization where you get paid really well. You don't pay taxes. They get your car tax-free. You have the diplomatic advantages. It was wonderful on paper.
Yes.
And then it wasn't because even though looking back, I can say I wasn't quite ready for that move. Um, there was also a lot about the UK that I didn't fit in.
Mm, mm.
The
Because it
cha-
is an entirely different culture to the US. And I'm a British citizen married to an American. We often say that, in our household that we're one culture divided by common language.
Yeah, it's so
Our-
true.
The way we speak and the way we use, or even the English language is two different tracks.
I can relate to that because I did study Oxford British English, and then I moved to the States and I had to relearn parts of it. Uh,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, I learned in time to appreciate sides of my life in the UK.
Mm,
Um, but I certainly did not fit in terms of personality, in terms of
mhm.
where I was working, in terms of where in the UK I lived. I love London, I will say that. But I was living in Reading, which is 15, 20 minutes by train.
I know Reading.
It's a small university town. It's cute, but that's it.
Yes.
I worked in an international company, which was great. but then I fell through the cracks of the different cultural cliques. So all the Italians would get together, all the French, and I was the only Bulgarian. So in a way, I was too Eastern European, but my behavior, my attitudes were Americanized already to the
Yeah.
point people would see me as pushy and too demanding.
Wow. So you had moved from Bulgaria, you had transformed. It sounds like you had taken some steps and you had actually gone through a transformation and become somewhat American. And then from there, you went to the UK and discovered that you were neither one or the other, correct? You were
Absolutely.
neither 100% Bulgarian or 100% American or any part of you British. So yes, it feels like being a fish out of water, doesn't it, when you're swimming upstream in an intercultural environment like that?
Especially when you go with high expectations. I mean, I moved to the States with a lot of movies in my head, and the same with the UK. Hugh Grant and Jude Law, and
Ah,
well, all the people that you fantasize the
yes.
scenes and the plots in the movie, but that's not always the reality. I find English people, well, British people, to be reserved, which is not a bad thing in itself. But I'm so outspoken and extroverted that I was short on people to talk to be able to express myself the way I do
Mm,
without being sort of looked at a little bit like a
mm,
brat.
mm, mm.
Um, and the politeness and following the rules. Um, I had just drunk the Kool-Aid the American way, so I can go and make a change. I can express myself. I can go against the
Yeah.
grind.
Yeah.
Just different things. And then I had to go back to being proper.
Mm. So there was quite a difference between your expectations and the reality when it came to moving there.
That was, yeah, that was a big part of it. If I had gone without expectation, it must have been better.
Mm. And so how did you eventually recognize that, how long did it take for you to recognize that this just really wasn't a place you wanted to be forever?
It took me about 6 months in which I hoped that I should give it a chance. It's fair.
Yes.
So, I mean, I had a good setup. It
Mm-hmm.
job, the career opportunities, the people I work with, they were smart and great. But personally, it was not my place. So after 6 months, I was trying to backpedal and go claim my job back in the States,
Mm.
which didn't seem to work. Um, and then I said, okay, I'm going to focus on making friends for a few months. I started dating, and that didn't go well. And one day I was going from my apartment to Reading's downtown area. And I stayed in a stoplight, a red light, so long that my frustration just boiled. And I said, I'm going to drive west back to the States as far as I can go. It sounds so absurd, but I drove and I drove and I drove. There were tears. And then I hit the Wales border and I didn't have money to cross because it was a cash payment. And I knew that something has to change.
Yes.
So I went back home and started thinking what I should do next and where to go.
Mm. So it sounds like you had a sort of a disruptive experience that with a little bit of drama that really broke through your psyche, your emotions. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I was not that young at the time anymore, but still, I was a bit naive as I said.
Mm,
Probably
mm.
because I was so lucky and things lined up so well for me when I first came to the States. Then the UK seemed uh, a bit turbulent experience.
Yes, yeah, yeah. So once you recognized that that place wasn't for you, did you make a, a sort of an executive decision that it had to be the US again?
No, I said I would try everywhere else.
Mhm.
Um, and partially the reason was I didn't want to be the failure that went to the US, came back and failed and went back.
Okay,
That
right.
sense of going back was a little bit unpleasant to think about. So I thought I'm going to go to a place that I've always wanted to go. And I tried to move to Sweden, the
Mm.
Netherlands, and Greece. Those were
Mm.
top choices. So for a while, I was looking for a job and applying, and finally something worked out.
Mm.
And I moved to a place that I had always liked. Um, And the funny thing in all those transitions is I've never been to the US before I moved. I've never been to the UK before I moved. And I
Sure.
did it again, but this time I moved to a place that at least I had seen on a work trip. And I had a first-hand experience of what the Netherlands felt, at least for those few days. So
Sure.
here was planned, well measured, and it worked out great for as long as it lasted.
Excellent. That's great. And how long did that last?
I was there for 2 years and 2 months.
Oh, excellent. I've had a
Yeah.
couple of assignments that lasted about 2 years, one in Cameroon, West Africa, and one in Japan. But in Japan, we were on our way into Saudi, so we knew the next step after that.
Mm.
So it can be quite disorientating being somewhat nomadic, but doing your best to be a resident. How did you navigate that? How where did you go after that?
I went to the Netherlands as one of the places that I had seen
Hmm.
and had a taste for it. And the plan was to stay for 5 years. That was the contract I had. Surprisingly, I felt like fish in water, really. I liked that it was smaller sized, everything is organized,
Yes.
very clean. There is bike paths, there's the city, there's the museums, which are very affordable. So I found everything that matters to me. I had the job, I had the bike paths. I'm an avid cyclist. I like art and I like it to be accessible. And in the Netherlands, you can see a lot of art for free throughout the cities,
Mm.
programs for it. I learned the language to a level where I could converse with the locals on everyday topics. And I felt part of the community really quick. It did help that I started dating a local, to
Mhm.
be totally fair.
Sure, sure. Well, yes, relationships count and they matter. Yeah.
And I think the most important part was I was so disappointed, disillusioned with my experience in the UK that I said, I have to be myself again. I can't just follow the cultural norms. So I went extreme, the other end of being myself, saying what I think bravely. And I found a tribe, people like me, amongst
Mhm.
the locals and in the expats. And once you find your people, then everything comes easier. You have the support, you have people
Right,
with experience.
right.
Uh, you can always find your way.
And so what brought that to a conclusion?
And that was just the unfortunate restructuring of the project I was on. It was a multi-country international project, and my part of it moved to Germany. And at the time, as a Bulgarian, I had to be on a visa. We were not part of the EU yet. I either had to move to Germany or move somewhere else.
Mm,
I chose to move somewhere else.
I see. Well, it's quite big decisions that you've had to face along the way.
Yeah, that move was very sad for me. I really wanted to stay in the Netherlands, but given that it was coming to an end, like you said, as a matter of fact, we have to move on.
Yeah.
Um,
And visas are something I would like to draw attention to because I think sometimes in the US we don't understand how visas work and how they're important and why they're important and how they govern our residency in a situation or in a country and what difference they can make to us. So I would just say that it's very, very important to pay attention to your visa situation and perhaps get a couple of different passports if you can.
yes, that is so true. I mean, the European Union has created conditions for people to travel a bit more freely for the EU citizens,
Yes,
but everybody else, it's so important to have the status and to understand what the benefits are that comes with it.
exactly. Exactly. And I know that since many people in the US are not familiar with the idea or around the world we cannot keep track of the visa situations because they're changing weekly. And what we have to do to be granted a visa is subject to change at any time. So that was just a little rabbit hole we went down there. So tell me about, did you move back to the US after this point?
After the Netherlands, I moved to Australia for a couple of
Oh,
years. I was trying to stay in Europe, in the European Union, because my visa was sort of valid for that
mhm.
area. But things didn't play out that way. And finally, I had to use my American passport to move to Australia. Um, when you go to a place with desire, I think that's what makes things easier. And when you go because you have to, but you
Yeah.
don't want to, the beginnings are a little bit slow. But I had to remind myself that I can't do that. Australia is beautiful. Everybody was jealous that I'm going to Australia where all the great beaches are, all the great
Yes.
nature is. So I said, okay, time to see what Australia is all about.
So you treated it as another event.
Yeah, I
I
find
think,
all this
yes, when we engage ourselves in that adventurous mindset, that can carry us really far.
right. Be open-minded, curious, and say, okay, if it doesn't work out, then I can go elsewhere, but give it a chance.
Yes, yes. So tell me about becoming your own best friend.
Right. Ironically, after I had told you about my adventures, it's the UK. That was the time where I became my best friends because I knew that I won't last. So I was afraid to make friendships for a while. I
Mhm.
thought, I don't want to make friends and then have to move. Um, and yes, ironically, you become your friends, and the moment you feel comfortable with yourself, that's what people see. And you start to attract more people. So I made
Yes,
friends in the
yes.
UK in the last couple of weeks when my mind was already free, unburdened. Instead of thinking I'm not happy here, I said I have something to look forward to.
Hmm.
So it's that whole trust in yourself, believe in yourself, but for real, and then
Mm,
it starts to show
mm,
because you're not afraid of the challenges. You build a confidence that you can build to overcome. You have the competences. You've moved twice. You can move again. And from then
sure.
on, making friendship really became much easier.
So how did that experience change you?
I honestly love my life the way it unfolded. It was not the way my parents would have wanted it or what I've ever imagined. But if you ask the little girl, I did want to see the world, and I did, at least part of it. It has made me so much more comfortable with myself, knowing that you can find something everywhere. It has made me confident that I can manage situations. Yes, part of me knows that something would always go wrong, and when
Mm,
that happens, laugh it off, take a
mm,
lesson from it, and don't focus on what didn't work.
yeah, yeah,
Glass
yeah.
is always half full, and as I joke, at least you have a glass.
That's very true. At least you have a glass. That's great. So how do you now, in your current situation, living in Chicago as a professional woman, how do you maintain that balance, between self-reliance and building new connections and building a new life wherever you find yourself?
I'll admit that it's a little bit tricky. Once you've gone through a few changes on your own, um, I shouldn't let my confidence get in the way of appreciating people who haven't had that experience. And
Mm,
the way when I was dating and found my partner, I had to be careful not to be in your face with what I've gone through, but
mm,
to recognize that everybody has something to contribute,
yes.
something to give us. And it's the balance between this give and take that it's tricky for me, but I'm trying my best to be authentic without being arrogant.
Mm. So that's a real golden line there. Try my best to be authentic without being arrogant. Yes. And once we've lived a lot of places, it can be easy to come off as a know-it-all, right?
And yes, and we don't mean to, but if you start the sentence, when I was in this
Yeah.
country, and I do that because I sort of keep track of
Yes.
my timeline. And I'm learning not to start my sentences that way. I just said,
Yes.
once this happened to me.
Yes. That's very good. So instead of starting a sentence was when I used to live in such and such, this happened. It's better to say, so I lived through this experience and then talk about the where later. Is that what you mean?
Yes, yeah, focus on what happened, not where.
Yes, focus on what happened, not the where. Well, this has just been fascinating. So you've given us a lot to think about in terms of making the leap. Is there anything that you would like to say to the listeners today as a little bit of a golden nugget at the end of this conversation?
My one advice would be know your whys. It's the cliche, but know why you're going to a new
Mm,
place
yes,
and let that guide you and motivate you in the low times. And when you
that's
have a high time, just ride that wave, enjoy it.
Yeah, that's good. Allow your whys to keep you buoyant in your low times. And when you're in the good times, ride the wave. That's very, very useful. So I have a lightning round, and I just like these are just off the top of your head. Whatever comes up, there's no right or wrong answers. This is just for fun, okay?
Sure.
If you could instantly become fluent in another language, what language would you choose?
I pick Greek.
Greek. Interesting. And why would you choose Greek?
Because I want to speak in a language that uses third alphabet.
Oh, okay. A different alphabet. Yeah. Excellent. So if you were to describe home in 3 words, what 3 words would you use?
Comfort, outward, minimalistic.
Comfort, outward, minimalistic. Excellent. Now, if I could teleport you to any country right now for 24 hours, where would you go?
Holland.
Holland. Oh, how sweet. And what is the most valuable attitude that you pack with you when you travel the world?
Just one, curiosity.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Do you want to give us one more?
Accepting.
Ah, yes.
Things are
Well,
different and you don't even have to understand why. Just accept it, they'll be different.
yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. That makes you become a more developed and mature global citizen, doesn't it?
It does. Comparison
Um,
doesn't go anywhere.
yeah. Yeah. So what's the most unexpected personal growth that you've learned as a result of living and traveling around the world as a global-hearted nomad?
That's a hard one. I think I want to say I've become a little bit more patient. And if so, that's good because I'm so impatient.
Excellent, excellent. And so those are wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today for this conversation. And
So much to
thanks for the wisdom in terms of how do you make a leap? Leap and the net will appear. You just
Thank you
seem
so much for the wonderful question.
Yeah, yeah. This was great. Thank you very much, Iliana. And ladies and gentlemen, listeners, we would really appreciate it if you could connect and rate and review Nomadic Diaries. We are on all the podcast systems. Iliana, where can people find you?
People can find me on Instagram. My name, Iliana Genkova. That's the easiest.
Okay, Instagram. Thank you very much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, just for today, it's sayonara, ma salama, and hasta luego.